I don't know what's been going on in your world over these last few weeks and months, but in my personal experience, the world has felt heavy. Can anybody relate to that? And we are part of this teaching that tells us that we can use the power of our mind to control conditions. And sometimes I get caught up in this idea that that means with the power of my mind, I'm going to rearrange the stuff of the world, and I'm going to tell the government what they're supposed to do, and I'm going to fix my siblings, and I'm going to make my children behave a certain way. It's so effective. Of course it's not. Of course it's not. And then I remember that through the power of our mind, we control the conditions that we experience through changing how we engage with what is. And then that tells me, well, gosh, that sounds like I have work to do. Wouldn't it be nicer if I could just fix all that? And that's not how it works. It happens on the inside of me, and then I say, well, I just want a sign. I want to just know what to do, and I want to know that it's right. And I want it to look like this. Maybe you can feel what I feel. I want it to feel like I have Jiminy Cricket on my shoulder saying, do this, not that. Very literal, very clear, very adamant, where I don't have to feel inward at all. I just know. And how likely is that? What if I were to say you do have a Jiminy Cricket? You do have a Jiminy Cricket. He may not have that, dapper jacket and hat, but we do have this voice on the inside of ourselves that is our connection to spirit that guides and leads us rightly all the time. But in order to hear it, we have to quiet down. We call it the still small voice, which is the name of my talk today. The still small voice. And we reference it all the time around here, don't we? I'm just going to tune into the still small voice. I'm just going to listen to the still small voice. And I am willing to bet that I am not the only person that ever sat out there and said, did I skip the week where they explained the still small voice? I had this idea that everybody but me had an actual audible cricket in their ear going, and now, Leslie, the thing to do is say this, but don't say that. And I wondered, what's wrong with me that I can't hear my cricket? I can't hear it. And then I did the most brilliant thing. I know that's not hard for you to believe that I did a most brilliant thing. I took a foundational class. And I learned that this thing that they were calling the still small voice, that it was the voice of the divine within me, and it isn't always an actual voice. That would have been helpful for me to know from the beginning. I was like, maybe my hearing's off. I don't know. I'm not hearing it. But we don't always hear it as an audible thing. Sometimes it's a felt sense. Sometimes it's an urgency to behave a certain way or go and do a certain thing. Sometimes it's a feeling like, that just isn't mine to do. And it is within all of us, uniquely and perfectly. Another word for it is our intuition. If you've done any Sacred Days work with me or with anyone else, you will know that the intuition is what happens when the voice of the divine within meets with our intellect. The imagery in that work is a green lightning bolt called the green flash of intuition. When, I know what is mine to do. I know what is mine to lay down. I know what is mine to just be with. And the truth feels very real in those moments. The presence of the divine feels very close in those moments. But we have to make space for ourselves to connect with it. And we also have to make sure that we're comfortable with it because there's this other voice in there. Now, probably not you. I'll tell my story. When I started listening for the still small voice, I found that it was there, but I also found the voice that said, "This is dumb. What are you trying to listen on the inside of your head for, Leslie? You're being crazy." The voice that pulled me toward protecting myself instead of opening up. The voice that called me toward blaming and shaming others instead of turning into myself. The voice that wanted to keep me the way I had always been. And we can call that ego, or we can call that personality or persona, or we can call that the wounded place in ourselves. So how do we tell the difference? We've talked about this recently, and if this is a return topic for you, I really invite you to try to hear it freshly. There are 3 things I turn to determine if this is the divine truth within me, the still small voice, or if it is my wounded heart trying to protect me. The truth, the still small voice within, will always be aligned with your personal values. It will never push you to do something that you feel is out of integrity. And it will never let you get away with doing something that's out of your integrity either. It'll be in there telling you, this isn't you, don't do this thing. The still small voice always directs you toward personal growth, your personal growth, which means sometimes it feels like it stretches, but it will never harm you. It will never hurt you. It will never be mean to you on the inside of yourself. And the still small voice will always lead you to behave from love, to think from love, to act from love. If there's a voice inside you that is not leading you towards love, or is pushing against your personal integrity, or is calling you to pull within and not grow, that's the wounded voice. And here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to make that voice the bad guy. We're not going to make it wrong. We're not going to tell it it's a naughty no-no. That's the part of yourself that needs the most love, that needs the most holding, the most support. That's how we quiet the wounded voice. We love it into wholeness. So when you find that voice chattering, I like to think of it as a smaller version of myself. And if, I have a few smaller versions of myself. If one of them was acting up out of being hurt, would I turn to them and say, "Listen, you little jerk. You just got to suck it up, buttercup, and do what you're told"? No. We look at those sweet little faces and we say, "Oh, you're having big feelings, aren't you? Let's just be with that. Do you want to crawl up on my lap? I've got you. I've got you." In the last few weeks and months, I have felt like I have needed to crawl up on a lap a lot. Very personal things, very public things, little things, big things. Health, war, relationships. Changes in the job that are really good, but change is always a little hard, right? We hit those bumpy spots in the middle. I don't know anyone who doesn't have some part of their woundedness really peeled open right now. So if that is you, please know you are in good company. You're in good company. And over and over and over, I have been asked, because, minister, what do we do? What do I do? What can we do about any of 1,000 situations? And my answer, as we all know by now, new friends, you're about to find out what my answer always is. It is, we turn to our daily, substantial, spiritual practice. And the reason we do that is because that is what connects us with the still, small voice that will always lead us rightly. The divine within that always gives us the direction that we most need. But in order to hear it, we have to quiet down. So what do we have to quiet down? First, we have to quiet down the outer world. The outer world. And the first step there is turn down the noise. You notice I didn't say turn it off entirely because we need to know what's going on in the world and in our lives. But what we don't need to do is listen to it on a 24/7 news cycle. Whether your noise is whatever's happening with the Kardashians this week. I just spent the day yesterday with siblings and nieces and nephews, and I found out way more than I ever wanted to know about the real housewives of some town or another. Or if it's the news, or if it's the gossip in your friend group, turn it down. I stumbled, as many of you know, I am chronically online. I'm a social media maven. I might have a small problem with it. But I found this quote that I think really says it all. Turn off the news. Go outside. Breathe. You were never meant to carry the burden of the entire world. Is there a part of you that just goes, at that news? As humans, we were not built to be constantly inundated with data and feelings and opinions and talking heads screaming on screens. Your tender heart was not breathed into life by the divine itself to be battered constantly. It makes sense that we're struggling with it. We're not built to live like that. Now, once we turn down all the things we're ready to turn off, the radio, the TV, the social media, yes, I heard my own words. Reverend Penny Masick told me once that it's okay to throw a spiritual tantrum as long as I pay attention to what I say and then act on it when I have calmed down. So, yeah, I heard you, Rev Penny. Once we have turned down the things with knobs, then we get to look at what's going on in this part of the circle. You know, we turn that off, but this can still be loud. And the next step is fostering healthy relationships and healthy choices and healthy boundaries, because discord is noisy. It is energetically noisy. There will be beloveds in your life that you cannot come to agreement with. And we have a choice in those moments. Do we want to stay here and scream at each other about who is right? Or do we want to find a way to lay that down? Whether that means agreeing to disagree, changing the topic, choosing to engage with that beloved less so that I can love them more. There may be even instances where we decide the best way to love is from afar without contact. And every bit of that is as hard as screaming in the face. But when we craft our inner circle in such a way that there is less of the noisy discord, a space opens to hear our own truth. A space that cannot be heard when we are so focused on what somebody else wants or what somebody else thinks or what we think somebody thinks we should do, say, think, have, be, not be. We were not built to run by committee. We were not built to please everyone. And when we know that, the same breath comes as turning off the news. Turning off that which hurts our tender hearts. Knowing that we can return when we're stronger. If we choose. If we choose. And as we're seeking to quiet our world, we are called upon to ask ourselves, what am I contributing to the tone of the world? Am I a place of peace, or am I a clanging bell disrupting the harmony? Am I going from friend group to friend group, conversation to conversation to conversation with the, you will never believe what he did? Or, oh my gosh, did you see? Or all of the idiots. That's one of my internal triggers I've agreed to on the inside of myself. When I start saying things like, those people, all of the fill in the blank, if they just did it my way, it would be right. And I mean, I am exceptional. It needs to be said. But all of those people weren't built to be run by committee either. It is not their job to be what I think it should be. And when I hear that tone in my voice, I go, oh, Leslie, I am the noise. I am the one drowning out spirit when I am in that space. And if I want my world to quiet down enough that I can hear the voice of the divine in that tiny whisper, I can't hear it over my own shouting. I can't hear it over my own bloated ego and woundedness that says, I'm the one who knows. And my friend, neither can you. So once we have quieted the world to the best of our experience, once we have decided, like Reverend Karen said, to heal up, once we have decided to be the eye of the hurricane, a hurricane is always turning, and the way the winds blow and buffet against each other, there's a space in the very center of it, where if you were lucky enough in a hurricane to be in that spot, and you look up, you can see blue sky, and the wind is not blowing where you are. And we get to pick, am I going to build the eye of the hurricane where I am? I can't always make the hurricane stop, but I can choose to be a place where if someone wanders by, needs that peace, I am that peace. And they're welcome where I am. When we've made that decision, then finally we are in the place where we can access that still small voice. And we have choices of ways we can do it. We can decide to listen to that still small voice through meditation, through the getting quiet. Physically quiet. Still. I think of it as being like when I'm sitting outside and I just want to listen to the birds. And then the neighbor with the new motorcycle, I'm working on it. I hear it. The neighbor with the new motorcycle decides to drive around the block, 47 times. He's really excited about his new bike. It's a nice bike. I just want to hear the birds. Meditation for me is like that. It is sitting down with the high intention and then, oh, here comes the motorcycle of my grocery list and the motorcycle of the argument I had with my coworker 3 weeks ago and the motorcycle of my husband and I not always agreeing on how to train the dog. We're in it. Our job in meditation is not to be perfect, thoughtless gurus of peace. It is to hear the motorcycle and go, oh yeah, and I'm meditating. And hear the motorcycle and go, oh yeah, I'm meditating, and to come back to it, and to come back to it, and to come back to it. You want to know why we will let people in here before service during the pre-service meditation? I would say about every fifth person has at some point said, we need a quiet meditation. We can go to the chapel. We don't need all this noise. Friends. It's a motorcycle. The practice doesn't do us any good if we are in pristine, perfect conditions. The skill is getting pulled aside and bringing it back. That is the skill. That is the practice. So if somebody comes in and sits 2 chairs away from you and opens up a lozenge and crumples, why are candy wrappers so loud when it's quiet? It's remarkable how loud a candy wrapper can be or a throat lozenge wrapper can be. It's not, oh, how rude. It's thank you for the practice. Thank you for the practice. Because we meditate so that when life goes absolutely kablang crazy, we can pull it back to center. That is the practice. So we can choose to meditate, to feel, to reflect, to connect, and to pull it back to center. If we have a more specific thing we're seeking to know about, we can try a practice like visioning, which is a structured asking, a meditative asking, where you seek not your own highest plan, but Spirit's highest plan of whatever we're asking about. It's this divine opening. The version of visioning, the practice of visioning that we practice here in Centers for Spiritual Living was created by a minister named Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith. And he writes this: visioning is a process by which we train ourselves to be able to hear, feel, see, and grasp God's plan for our life or for whatever particular project we're working on. It's based on the idea that we are not here to tell God what to do or to ask God for things, but to be absolutely available for what God is already doing, to open ourselves to grasp what is already happening. It's the Jiminy Cricket. This is where we get the specific answers. Now, if you're anything like me, and a few of you might be, you will sometimes get very clear answers. Do this thing, don't do that thing. And sometimes you'll get a unicorn. And it may take you a little while to figure out what your unicorn means. But it's encoded in the language of your own heart and soul. Spirit will never give you information that isn't relevant or valuable for you. Just as we were not built to live in discord or be run by committee, we were not built to be alike. We are the diversity of life itself. We are how God shows up. And the third way we can soften into quieting our own inner world is to choose to practice the presence. To choose to practice the presence. It is softening into knowing the presence, feeling the presence, living the presence of the divine in gratitude all the time. It's resting in the quiet. And when something comes along, be it bird song or motorcycle, saying, oh, there's God as a motorcycle. Oh, there's God as the bird song. There's God as the sunshine. There's Spirit as the rain. There's universal good as a phone ringing. There's the sweetness of Spirit as the voice of my grandmother, who's in her 90s. Got to see her yesterday. I don't know how many more times I'm going to get to play naughty games with my grandmother that force her to swear, which is a family tradition. She's so proper and sweet. Oh, but I'm grateful for it. And in that place of gratitude, there is this peace and this quiet that opens us up in a way that is unlike anything else. And so here is the invitation. Whatever your motorcycles are, whatever your clanging bells are, I invite you to really, every day this week, find a practice that quiets down. And really feel inward for that still small voice. And should you find an instruction, should you find a message that's just for you, obey it. And so it is. Let's anchor this in with some prayer. It is so good. It is so good to remember that there is this infinite presence that we call the divine that is everywhere, all the time, in and through and as every sentient being. To know that it has built its qualities of good into every single one. That each, within the sound of my voice, are love and wholeness, are kindness and beauty, are abundance and gratitude, and that all are in the receivership of grace every single moment, all the time. And so knowing that truth, I know that whatever pain, whatever wound, whatever question each brought in on their hearts and minds this day, that Spirit is already on it. That we are held in the place of healing and love and rest right where we are, right as we are. And I am so grateful. I'm so grateful to know the good within each and as each. And I call it delightfully fabulous as we release this word into the action of universal law. And we say, and so it is.